We are finally standing at the summit of Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, and here at the top, he's achieved cinematic immortality with his greatest movie of all time and my personal favorite, Terminator 2: Judgment Day. And on the journey to the top, he leaves behind a trail of increasingly successful hits. Well, mostly successful hits. And in front of us, well, the only way off a mountain is down. And I'm way too deep into the mountain metaphors to stop now. So allow me to be your Sherpa as we navigate the treacherous terrain that is Last Action Hero. Hello friends, and welcome back to Every Arnold Movie Ever, episode 20. And let's get this out of the way right now. Yes, Last Action Hero is considered a failure. It's a box office failure and mostly an artistic failure, and it would end up causing irreparable damage to Arnold's reputation. At this point in his career, he was grand slams only. The problem is, Last Action Hero is basically a parody satire, and parody satire is very difficult to turn into a hit the size of Terminator 2. It can be a hit, of course. Scream grossed $87 million, but Scream was also made for the total of Arnold's Last Action Hero salary, $15 million. But, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning, when Last Action Hero was simply a screenwriter's fantasy come true. It's the stuff of legend. And also, it hoodwinked every aspiring writer to think all they had to do was write one great screenplay and they'd make it big. Back in 1991, two Wesleyan college students by the names of Penn and Adam Leff came up with a high-concept script that satirized action movies. Essentially, what if a teenager who knows everything about action movies got sucked into an action movie? Penn and Leff did a ton of research, watching every action movie they could get their hands on, and the resulting script, titled Extremely Violent, was a buzzy calling card that they sent out to as many agents as they could. Michael Goldman, an assistant of Agent Chris Moore, essentially forced him to read the script, and like I always say, assistants are your friends. They are the first line of defense between you and an agent or a producer or a manager. Always be nice to assistants, please. And Moore, who would go on to produce Good Will Hunting and American Pie, and you may remember him from Project Greenlight, had a lunch date cancel, giving him an open hour to sit around in his office and, do his job. So he saw Extremely Violent sitting on his desk, opened it up, and within 45 pages thought, I cannot wait to sell this movie. And if anybody else was reading it right now, they'd be having that same reaction or they're stupid. He saw it as a modern-day Wizard of Oz, so he pitched Penn and Leff to be their agent, and within 1 week, he got the script into a bidding war. Now, for a screenwriter, this is the stuff dreams are made of. You come up with a script idea with your buddy in college, you go, hey, wouldn't that be great? You write it, and within a week of sending it out, you have an agent and a bidding war, and oh, by the way, you just heard maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger is interested? Are you kidding me? Look, when you write a SPEC script, which is a script you write without anyone paying you, you're mostly just trying to get the attention of the assistant or the manager or the agent or producer who has a stack of scripts sitting in front of them. And if you don't have something to hook them within the first 5 to 15 pages, it'll go in the trash. They don't have time to keep reading and go like, well, wait, by page 90, it gets really good. No, you have to get your voice on the page and get on there quick and make a very big splash early. It's the reason the script for American Pie was originally titled Unfinished Teenage Sex Comedy, which can be made for under $10 million, that studio readers will most likely hate, but I think you will love. You gotta pick that up, right? I did the same thing a couple of years ago with a script I wrote after leaving WWE. I titled it, My Dad is the Guy from Smash Mouth. It became my calling card, it got me a bunch of meetings, got me a new manager, it opened up a bunch of doors, and it was made with the intention of, if you read that title, you've got to open this thing up and at least see what happens in the first 5 pages. The harder part is, once you make the splash, does anything ever happen with that script? Normally that script is just the icebreaker, the handshake, the way to, do we do handshakes still on? I don't know, maybe the fist bump, the way to get into a room, and then once you get in there, they say, we love this script. What else do you have? But here, with Extremely Violent, Penn and Leff skipped all of that. After an intense bidding war, they sold the script to Columbia for $350,000. Though if Arnold signed on, they would get a bump up to $500,000. And now, the guy that their main character is named after, is interested in starring in their movie. Unbelievable. Arnold was attracted to the story because he related to its intense love of movies. Having a kid come into a movie awakened certain fantasies I had as a kid in Austria, like sitting on a horse with John Wayne. But to seal the deal with Arnold, Universal would have to give him more control over the project than anything he'd done in the past. They were going to make him executive producer. And you have to understand, Arnold is the biggest star in the world. He just had Terminator 2, one of the biggest movies of all time. And while Arnold liked the concept of the movie, he didn't think it was, quote unquote, executed professionally. Which, sure, these guys are first-time writers who just graduated college. They could probably use some help. Arnold was also concerned about the sheer amount of violence and the character of Arno Slater himself, who didn't really have much depth, which was done on purpose because he was playing a vapid action hero. So, Arnold requested that his old buddy from the jungles of Valverde, Shane Black, come on board to do a rewrite. Now, in the time between Predator and Last Action Hero, Shane Black's salary per script had risen to $1.75 million for The Last Boy Scout. He was the hottest script writer out there, so it makes sense to bring him in, except it's a little weird because the script Leff and Penn wrote was actually satirizing all of Shane Black's tropes. So the question then becomes, can Shane Black satirize himself? Black and his writing partner David Arnott took the initial concept of a teen going into the screen and beefed it up to match the expectations of a summer blockbuster. That version of the script had a bunch of fun flourishes. Black mentions at one point Jack Slater grabs a scratch on the film and uses it to stab someone. Columbia seemed happy with that draft, and then they found their director. Enter John McTiernan. He of Predator, Die Hard, and Hunt for Red October fame. He is action movie royalty, but he's not exactly a comedy director. Originally, Penn envisioned a Robert Zemeckis or John Landis directing, people who knew how to approach a genre with a sense of humor. As Penn puts it, it's easier for someone from the outside to mock the conventions of action movies than it is for the people who created them in the first place. And once John McTiernan entered the picture, literally, he called for his own rewrites as is standard. So out go Black and Arnott, and in comes William Goldman, who was paid $1 million for 4 weeks' work. But they weren't done yet. A few more writers were brought in to add a little here, take a little bit out there, add something there, and suddenly the script lacked cohesion. But the biggest shift was in the character motivation. In the Leff, Penn, and Black Arnott drafts, Danny was a cynical teenager whose father recently died, and he was losing himself in action movies to cope. The twist is, the projectionist turns out to be the devil trying to steal Danny's soul. The new version loses the devil and a few years on the kid, turning him from a teen into a precocious kid. 9 or 10. They also lost the idea that his father died, meaning the main character no longer has an obstacle to overcome. And at some point, the Arno Slater character was changed to model action characters more in the vein of John McClane or Riggs from Lethal Weapon. Cranky, divorced, hardened cops. And that's a different character than the ones Arnold played up until this point, save for maybe Kindergarten Cop. So suddenly, it didn't make as much sense why Arnold was playing that character. And basically, the finished version is a Frankenstein's monster of all the different drafts. The Hamlet sequence is from the original draft. Benedict's glass eye is from William Goldman. Leo the Fart is from Black and Arnott. And the action movie satire gave way to more broad-based parody. Chris Moore agrees. It had shot way off to the left of what was originally intended. If there had been more time, there's a chance someone might have stood up and said, "What the fuck are you doing with an animated cat?" McTiernan knew there were problems, so he called Shane Black back in to do another rewrite of the rewrites of his rewrite. Black considered it an insult to his professional pride and turned him down. But Arnold seemed happy enough. I guess $15 million probably helped, and in August of 1992, he officially agreed to make the movie, and the script problems would either work themselves out or end up on the screen. Spoiler! Script problems never simply work themselves out. Always fix the script before you get to the set! Once Arnold was in, they set a concrete release date of June 18th, 1993. The movie opens on the movie within the movie. There's a hostage situation, and here comes Jack Slater in snakeskin boots, a leather jacket, and a red shirt. No, not a polo. Damn. We get our tropes here. The abrasive police chief, Slater breaking the rules, a random appearance by Tina Turner. Side note, I watched Predator 2 right after this, and it opens in nearly identical fashion, so they kind of nailed this part. But then Slater's first one-liner just, I mean, it makes no sense.
You want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres.
Someone got paid $1 million to write that. Somebody. One of these fucking guys. Then it's up to the roof to confront the Ripper, who has Slater's son. And here's where we get our first confusing shift in tone, as we delve into parody with Slater removing all the guns on his person.
Just one gun, Jack? You gotta be kidding.
That in itself is a pretty ridiculous gag, but there's this cutaway to the Ripper's reaction, and it's totally played for laughs. This is the first indication they never quite nailed down the overall rules of the movie within the movie. If this is supposed to be a straight-up action movie with action movie tropes that Danny can make fun of, it cannot be self-aware, because then it cancels out Danny's observations. But time after time, this movie ignores that and just goes for like really weird, cheap laughs. Speaking of Danny, the screen goes blurry here just as the Ripper is about to kill Jack's son, and we meet Danny Madigan in a rundown New York City theater. He's skipping school to watch Jack Slater 3 for the 30th time, and he has a friendship with Nick the projectionist, who's been changed from the devil to a sad, old, mostly kindly man. Nick says he's screening the new Jack Slater at midnight and invites Danny to come. But first, Danny has to spend a couple minutes at school where his teacher shows a clip from Laurence Olivier's Hamlet. Danny's bored by the iambic pentameter of old Billy Shakes.
Talk, just do it.
So he imagines Arnold in the role, and this is where you can do all the self-aware gags because it's coming from Danny's imagination and shows how his worldview is affected by action movies. He wants everything to be an action movie. When he gets home, Danny's berated by his mother, who drops the one and only line about his dad being dead.
I didn't say, hey, what the hell? Let me see what it'd be like to be a widow before I'm 40. Give that a try.
Then she goes to work, and Danny gets robbed at knife point. And there's this moment where the robber puts the knife on the sink and turns his back, giving Danny a moment to take action and turn his life into an action movie, but he doesn't. And that's supposed to be the moment we hang pretty much the entire character arc on. He wasn't able to stand up for himself and, I don't know, violently stab a guy in the back? Jesus, is that the goal we're setting for this guy? He makes mention of it a little bit later, talking about how he wants to stand up for himself like Jack Slater, but this is really the only instance of that. He isn't bullied in school or anything, he just has this one isolated incident where he pretty much made the best decision he could as a 10-year-old, and then the robber didn't even take anything.
You got junk!
And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I want to take a little detour and look at the fundamental flaw of this movie. Danny needed more depth. He either needed to be grieving his father's death or feel like he's alone in this world and his only friend was a fictional Jack Slater. It would lend weight to everything that comes after, and you can almost feel the behind-the-scenes tug-of-war playing out on screen, with Arnold requesting his character have more depth, but not understanding or caring that technically Danny is the main character. Let's just do a quick comparison of how the John Connor T-800 dynamic is treated compared to Danny Slater. In T2, John Connor has a surfeit of issues. His mother has saddled him with the knowledge that he's supposed to be a great military leader, but she abandoned him while trying to prepare him for that future. She's in a mental institute, which makes him think everything she told him was a lie, and then his entire world is upended when 2 Terminators show up, and suddenly everything she said was true. He now has guilt about not believing his mother, and he has to save her, stay alive, and somehow also learn to lead the human resistance against the machines. To do this, he must learn to trust a machine, which makes an effort to learn human behavior even though it can't replicate some of it. It forms a bond with him in order to better protect him, and they both achieve their goals by the end. Great balance, achievable goals for both characters, satisfying conclusion. In Last Action Hero, Danny likes movies. Now, Jack Slater is grieving the death of his son, but he's also a loser who pays someone to call the police station pretending to be his ex-wife. He has a daughter who will follow in his footsteps, and he's constantly fearing for her safety. Meeting Danny will help Slater get over the death of his son by saving Danny in an identical situation. But remember, Slater is a fictional character within the reality of this movie, so it's really hard to get invested in his personal stakes. We need Danny to be the heart of the movie, not Jack Slater, and that in turn would strengthen Arnold's character because he would be helping the real-life kid. I'm not saying Arnold's instincts were wrong, they were just imbalanced. They needed to give Danny something to hold on to. Okay, sorry. Now that we got that out of the way, and we recognize that this movie just won't work on an emotional level, we can at least appreciate it on a surface level, because when they're focused on satirizing the action movie genre, it's on point. After Danny makes it to the theater, Nick, the super nice old man, is kind of a dick to him.
I about gave up on you.
Sorry.
It's midnight, dude. You're asking this kid to go out by himself in dangerous New York City. And hey, technically, it's your fault that he was robbed. Nick gives him a magic ticket that originated with Harry Houdini, an incredibly silly shortcut to get Danny in the movie. It is so goofy that I kind of love it.
Please retain your stub, sir.
Danny sits down to enjoy Jack Slater 4, which is a Franco Columbo film, a nice nod to Arnold's longtime bodybuilding bud, and of course the star of Beretta's Island. We open with Vivaldi, played by Anthony Quinn, setting up the movie within a movie plot. It involves mobsters, and it's unnecessarily complicated, not really tying into action movie elements at all. We also meet Vivaldi's one-eyed henchman Benedict, who has a penchant for whimsical glass eyes. He's played by Charles Dance, and he at least seems to be having a blast in this role.
It's great, isn't it?
Now, the joke in this scene is that because they're on the third Jack Slater sequel, they've run out of steaks, so they torture Slater's favorite second cousin, Frank.
I know you Jack Slater's favorite second cousin in the whole world.
Good joke. Then it's back to the action movie tropes. Slater visits Frank, who immediately gets blown up.
It's a bomb!
He's okay. Minor wound. Both cops dead.
And we get a nod to Lethal Weapon here.
2 days to determine.
Then a car chase and the moment that Danny gets sucked into the movie.
Who the hell are you?
Slater gives us a much better terrible catchphrase here.
How is that guy a cone of phrase?
And I wish more of his dialogue was made up of corny puns, or even all of it. They could have gone full Mr. Freeze in this one. It totally would have worked.
Cool party.
The chase ends up in the LA River waterway, reminiscent of T2 from jumping the car through the barricade off the road to the chase itself. And the effects here, it's so weird. This shot looks like a Universal theme park ride. Look at how it unnaturally floats and turns in the air. I do love how all the trucks explode, though, sometimes for no reason. Then Jack and Danny go to the LAPD, which has valet parking, and we get our parade of cameos. Sharon Stone, Robert Patrick in a pale comparison to his cameo in Wayne's World.
Have you seen this boy?
But I'm actually more interested in the blink and you'll miss some moments, like a cameo by the actor who plays Frankie Pantangeli in Godfather 2. Also, this rookie cop at the beginning of the movie is Noah Emmerich. And after taking a couple of movies off, Arnold's other bodybuilding bud, Sven-Ole Thorsen, is back in the fold.
Otis, don't shoot! He would probably
Now at the station, they get chewed out by the chief, and Danny tries to convince Slater that he's in the movie.
I'm in the movie!
To do so, he takes him to Blockbuster in a fun meta moment where Arnold doesn't exist in the movie world, so his roles are all taken by Sylvester Stallone.
He's fantastic. This is his best performance ever.
This isn't the first time Arnold has referenced Sly. But I remember this one being a big deal at the time. And this type of self-referential stuff was rarely done in movies in 1993, except for maybe straight-up parodies like Hot Shots.
I loved you in Wall Street!
I would imagine it's a lot like kids watching Deadpool now, like, oh my gosh, is he allowed to make those references? Wow, this is so cool. Now, Slater isn't convinced by any of this, so Danny says he can take Slater to the bad guy's house.
Wait, where are you going?
I'll be back. Ha! You did not gonna say that, did you?
That's what you always say.
I do?
And there's this fun exchange that shows how helpful Danny can be in this world.
That's him, the henchman with the glass eye.
Are you a henchman?
No, I only go as far as lucky.
But once again, we're given this very bizarre, over-the-top joke that wouldn't be found in any normal action movie.
Make no mistake, they are exceptionally well trained.
And I think the frustrating thing about this is that there are plenty of funny lines sprinkled throughout the movie that keeps it watchable.
Yeah, he's guilty of acting like an asshole. Arrest him, I have to arrest half of Congress.
But the ones that miss are so out of place and they're embarrassing. Like, those are the ones that I feel like, this is why I can't love this movie. I try so hard. Then we learned about the very real to Jack trauma that his kid was killed in the previous movie. And Danny kind of falls by the wayside for a long stretch. He becomes just another character in this movie. Now, Benedict tracks Danny to Slater's house, and we get more of a showcase from Charles Dance, who gets the tone just right. I think he's the best performance in this movie.
I should tell you that I have killed people smarter and younger than you.
And clearly Danny is caught up in the movie he's in because he decides to play chicken with Benedict, only to remember at the last second,
Oh shit! I'm a comedy sidekick! It's not gonna work!
and that's the lane this movie should have stayed in. Those types of observations, they're great, especially when they lead to an action like him realizing he has to get out of the way. But then they throw in more wonky effects and an E.T. parody? Why? Just because you had a kid on a bike? And then they've got smoke coming out of the police chief's ears, and there's a cartoon cat, but not only that, they also throw in a black and white digitization of Humphrey Bogart. Remember they were putting old film stars in like vacuum cleaner commercials? For some reason it's in this movie too. Would that have been in a Jack Slater movie normally? It's nonsense. But here's where I'm always conflicted about Last Action Hero, because I love when they go back to Slater's apartment and this happens.
Jeez, how'd you know there was a guy in there?
There's always a guy in there.
One of my favorite jokes in the movie. Plus, his closet is full of the exact same outfit. That's funny. And they even included the incidental vehicular mayhem that I mentioned in my T2 episode. All of that works because it's straight out of action movies, and we also get Danny calling out F. Murray Abraham for explaining too much of the plot instead of just killing the heroes.
You made the classic movie mistake. Don't explain so much.
The Incredibles did the exact same joke years later. It was done here first.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing, I can't believe.
But then we get to the funeral for a dead gangster named Leo the Fart. Surely they named him that just so they could give Arnold these lines.
Leo the Fart is gonna pass gas one more time. He's a good man. A flatulent man.
This is where Vivaldi's master plan is supposed to take place, where he kills all the mobsters with nerve gas and was injected into Leo the Fart, and Slater needs to get rid of the body to save everyone. Who cares? But like the crane sequence here is like the big set piece of the movie. But the whole sequence is so corny, from Arnold pretending Leo is still alive.
Help me! Get me out of here!
His man's not there!
To banging his head on the crane. To having all the mobsters, including the old ladies, pull out guns. Once again, if the movie within a movie is too ridiculous, Danny's character is rendered obsolete.
Look, elephant!
And like, even this cool moment in the elevator, I love this effect, actually looks really good, and I love Arnold's face when he falls. But there's no real danger to any of this. We know he's going to survive. If anybody's in jeopardy, it would be Danny, but he's nowhere to be seen in this. He's operating a crane out of danger. Anyway, Slater falls in the La Brea tar pits. We get a nod to Jurassic Park, and then also we do get a funny gag here.
You know, tar actually sticks to some people.
Then the plot of the movie within the movie kind of wraps up. Benedict betrays and kills Vivaldi because he's tired of him. And then, another very bizarre thing, he suddenly just breaks the fourth wall. He's talking directly to the audience. Did I miss a scene? Does he now understand he's in a movie? Why didn't anyone tell us? And even if that's the case, what is he looking at? Is there a camera there? There's no camera there, is there? And it never happens again in the movie. Slater confronts him and gets a little payback.
Don't move. That was for blowing up my second cousin Frank's house. And this is for blowing up my ex-wife's house.
And this is the point where they cross over into the real world.
Usually when I do that, it leaves a hole.
Now it takes a moment for Slater to calibrate and learn a couple hard lessons. You can't blow up cars with guns, you can't punch windows,
My hand, it really hurts.
and you can't play chicken. Slater's world is turned upside down, and moments like this are obviously the reason Arnold pushed for a deeper character.
Oh yeah, let's push his son off the building. Gives you nightmares the rest of your life. But you're fictional, so who cares?
Danny apologizes to his mom by bringing her her very own Arnold Schwarzenegger. Slater stays up all night talking to Danny's mom, which leads to another funny line.
We talked. I never just talked to a woman before. It's neat.
Neat.
And they try to track down Benedict, but Danny's starting to lose faith in Slater in the real world.
You believed in me in the movies. Why not now?
Because here, you're just...
The story starts to rush here to get us to the finale. Like, even though this is the real world and they say, oh, well, Benedict's not just going to show up, he shows up and Slater tracks him down, but Benedict gets away.
Hey, how do you know?
It's just a cabbie!
You've seen those movies where they say, make my day, or I'm your worst nightmare. Well, listen to this one. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Ha! You didn't know I'm gonna say that, did you?
Damn it. See, the real world stuff is winning me over all over again, and this is why I'm so conflicted about this movie. I love that Rubber Baby Bucky Bumpers line. They figure out that Benedict brought the Ripper out of Jack Slater 3, and he's going to try and kill the real-life Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that will put an end to Slater 2. So everyone shows up to the premiere of Jack Slater 4. We get tons of red carpet cameos. Van Damme, Damon Wayans, Chevy Chase nearly doing a pratfall, but he didn't get paid, so he's not going to go all the way. Hammer, Belushi, doing his Belushi thing.
I'm not really a big fan of Arnold's. She is, you know. Arnold really turns her on, and I just want to be there when it happens.
Twin Peaks. The Ripper also walks the red carpet, followed by Tom Noonan moments later, and then Slater comes face to face with Arnold.
Everybody down!
Who has a funny little bit where he's interviewed and can't help plugging Planet Hollywood.
Talking about Hollywood, at Planet Hollywood, we have this incredible memorabilia.
The Ripper grabs Danny, and we get this callback to the beginning of the movie, and it's Slater's chance at redemption. His story arc is going to come full circle here, except this time, the Ripper just throws Danny off the side of the building. Whoops! Slater failed again. Now, don't worry, he's fine. And Slater manages to electrocute the Ripper, and we get our second I'll be back, followed by an Arnold retort. Which doesn't top the gold standard I'll be back response.
Only in a rerun.
And isn't even as good as the I'll be back moment earlier in the movie.
Everybody keeps waiting for you to work it in. It's kind of like your calling card.
I'll tell you what. I think once they enter the real world, everything works. And it re-energizes the movie. Except this part where Jack unrealistically throws Danny back onto the roof. Always bugged me. And then we get what I think is a play on...
I need a vacation.
With...
I need a hospital.
And then Benedict shows up and overpromises on what the climax of the movie could have been.
Think of villains, Jack. You want Dracula? I'll fetch him. I can get King Kong. We'll have a nightmare with Freddy Krueger. A surprise party for that old Hitler. Hannibal Lecter can do the catering.
I remember getting so excited about the possibilities of what this could mean for the movie. Holy shit. Is Jack Slater going to have to fight Dracula and Freddy Krueger? But they don't deliver on any of that. I wish they would have just not even mentioned it, because it really bums me out to think about what this movie could have been. Instead, Benedict outsmarts Slater, but then Danny makes the save and Slater causes Benedict to explode.
No sequel for you.
Why is that happening in the real world? Was his eye a bomb or something? Ticket falls, and our only other character to come out of the movies is Death from Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal, here played by Gandalf himself, Ian McKellen. Death turns out to be an ambulance chaser and goes after Jack. And Danny realizes the only way to save Jack is to get him back into the movie, so his fatal gunshot turns into a flesh wound. Smart use of the concept. But here comes Death, and Danny gets his big emotional moment that, you know, basically rings hollow because it's not set up properly.
I've had it up to here with you, mister. Who stays, who goes. This one stays!
Gandalf tells Danny he isn't dying anytime soon.
He's not on any of my lists, though you are.
Now?
Oh, no.
Then calls him a dum-dum.
Unfortunately, you're not very bright.
And reminds him
I might be looking for the other half of the ticket.
They get Slater back into movie. His fatal gunshot turns into a flesh wound.
What is this, some kind of a joke?
And Danny returns to his world. And that's Last Action Hero. The first test screening for Last Action Hero occurred on May 1st, 1993, and according to Premiere Magazine, the audience lost their minds when they heard what movie they'd be seeing. They were pumped to see the next Arnold movie. And then they saw the next Arnold movie. Now, it was missing shots and effects, as most test screening prints are, but the reaction was extremely violent, metaphorically speaking. It was so legendarily calamitous, they burned the response cards and scrambled to reshoot the ending. And in a panic, McTiernan once again picks up the phone and calls Shane Black to see if he could salvage the edit. And Black, this time he came in and he made a grim assessment. It was a mess. There was a movie in there struggling to emerge, which would have pleased me, but what they'd made was a jarring, random collection of scenes. The casting of the little boy was one of the absolute misfires of Western culture. Also, they rewrote every line of ours, and I don't like the dialogue they wrote. The movie, by all accounts, was not working, and there was no time to fix it. But its biggest obstacle was yet to come. Because without competition, Last Action Hero probably would have cleaned up at the box office. Most other movie releases had actually backed off of Last Action Hero, thinking it would gobble up ticket sales. Except for one movie. Announced for a June 11th release, just a week before Last Action Hero.
On June 11th, a Steven Spielberg film. An adventure 65 million years in the making.
The buzz around Jurassic Park was monumental, but Last Action Hero refused to budge. They just wouldn't do it. If they pushed, they could have tightened the movie and given it a little room to breathe. When it was released, it wouldn't have gotten trampled by Jurassic Park, but moving the date would have shown a lack of confidence in the movie, which might have been bad optics. So they stayed the course, and Columbia did their best to pretend they had the next Star Wars on their hands. They pumped $60 million into the promotion. They had this outrageously 90s deal with Burger King.
Boom! Last Action Hero. What do you think of anyone who doesn't see this movie?
Big mistake.
I love this!
They sold these cups. I got the whole collection of them off of eBay. As soon as I opened the box, I got this rush of nostalgia because I remember buying all of these. They had this little gimmick where you put the sleeve on it, and then it kind of looks like it's moving like a movie. They also put a giant Jack Slater blow-up balloon in Times Square, but it was promptly removed because he's holding dynamite and the World Trade Center bombing had just happened 3 days earlier. And most incredibly, this was the first movie to be advertised in space. They made a deal with NASA for $500,000 to put the name of the movie on the side of the rocket. Everybody knew that Last Action Hero was coming out even before Jurassic Park. But what the movie was about was much less clear. Is it comedy, action? Is it for kids, adults, for aliens, for everyone? Who fucking knows? Jurassic Park came out on June 11th, 1993 and made $47 million opening weekend. It became a massive pop culture touchstone for a lot of people. And building off of what Terminator 2 accomplished just 2 years prior, Jurassic Park expanded on the potential of blending practical and computer-generated effects. But it was also a top-notch Steven Spielberg adventure. There's a reason they keep trying to replicate it, much like Terminator. You're never gonna do it, folks. Spielberg couldn't even do it. So, with all that context laid out, here we have Last Action Hero releasing a week later. And people are still talking about Jurassic Park. They're still talking about Jurassic Park today. But they're still going to see Jurassic Park back then. I remember when Last Action Hero came out, my family went to the movies, and they all went to see Jurassic Park, and I went to see Last Action Hero by myself. And my theater was mostly full. I took that as a good sign, but I'm not an idiot. Even I knew Last Action Hero was dead. The audience wasn't buying it. It opened to a paltry $15 million, well below expectations and well below Jurassic Park. The headlines were brutal. Variety said, "Lizards eat Arnie's lunch." Time had an article titled, "The Dinosaur and the Dog." And Cracked magazine had this great cover. Apparently everybody was lining up to take pot shots at Arnold, and the reviews were nasty too. Siskel and Ebert?
This is a most ambitious project that works quite well in fits and starts and then drags on for what seemed to me like an extra 30 minutes wearing out its welcome.
I was also disappointed in it, Gene, and also, like you, I was impressed by some of the stunt work.
Last Action Hero ended up grossing $50 million domestic, $87 million international for a total of $137 million. The budget was something like $85 million, so it's like technically profitable, but just barely. By the way, that rocket that was supposed to take off was delayed until August, meaning the movie was already a flop by the time it went in the air. "So embarrassing, it's like a joke," said one Columbia executive. "It's like putting Howard the Duck on the side of your rocket." Just like with T2, Arnold brought in a big rock band to do a song for the movie. AC/DC wrote Big Gun, and like T2, Arnold had a cameo in that video, really putting that morphing technology from T2 to important artistic use. And it's funny that the name of the song is Big Gun, because for the Last Action Hero toy line, which Arnold approved himself, he specifically didn't want Jack Slater to have a gun so the toys would have mass appeal. Except if you're a boy buying an action figure, every single figure at that time came with a gun or 12. They sold so poorly that some of the action figures shown in the commercials never even saw the light of day. Jurassic Park destroyed them on the toy shelves too. Those were very good toys though, so I get it. And yes, of course, there was a shitty Nintendo game and a Sega and Super Nintendo game. There's also a pinball machine, and it's also funny because that pinball machine had a gun for the ball trigger. I guess that one slipped by Arnie. I have a soft spot for Last Action Hero. Coming off of T2, I couldn't have been a bigger Arnold fan. I was rooting for him, and I felt like he was suddenly the underdog up against Jurassic Park. I really wanted to love this movie. I've mentioned it a couple times. I would pick and choose my favorite parts and then try to ignore the stuff that I didn't think worked. And man, it almost works a couple times. If they could trim a half hour out of the middle, get rid of the animated cat, get rid of Humphrey Bogart, lose the silly jokes like the dog pyramid, drop the mobster subplot including Leo the Fart, and reinstate Danny's character motivation, the movie might have worked. That's all you gotta do. Just change most of the movie and you've got a hit on your hands. But the truth is, the movie is not awful. It's trying something different, and for that, it's admirable. Yeah, it doesn't always work, and there are times where you can feel the studio interference, but they still take chances. I also think Arnold puts in a really good comedic performance here, and Austin O'Brien as Danny Madigan, yeah, maybe he says, "I'm in the movie" one too many times, but he's pretty good for the material he had to work with. Now, maybe Arnold got himself in this position through hubris, thinking he could handle all aspects of production. But it's clear he put everything into this movie like he always does, and he wanted it to work. It's also one of those things where you have the biggest star on the planet, and he's making suggestions, and he's approving things, and no one's going to really challenge him, even if it might make the movie better. But this was the precursor to a lot of self-referencing movies like Scream, and a lot of the mid-90s movies. They all kind of had this attitude. It was a little ahead of its time, but also kind of not. The action genre was going through a change at this point, and the types of movies they were making fun of would fall out of fashion as the 80s action stars aged. If you made this movie in 1996, I think you missed your window. The updated version of this movie, Hot Fuzz, was satirizing 90s and 2000s action movies such as Point Break and Bad Boys 2. In fact, Hot Fuzz is probably closer to what Last Action Hero intended to be, both in terms of scale and screenplay intelligence, and that's why it worked. I'm endlessly fascinated by Last Action Hero, the story of how it's made, the messy movie itself, and what happened afterwards, because make no mistake, there was... The director John McTiernan describes this as the worst time he's ever had in this business. When I was sent the script, the thing I liked was that it was wildly irreverent, but that was all getting watered down, and we were just trying to get the damn thing finished. But he bounced back with a vengeance, with Die Hard with a Vengeance. Good sequel. Then the quality of his movies kind of dipped with each subsequent project until he was sentenced to prison for perjury. His last movie was Basic in 2003. Shane Black's ride at the top crescendoed with a $4 million payday to write The Long Kiss Goodnight in 1996. It was a flop, and he wouldn't get another writing credit until 2005 when he mounted a comeback by writing and directing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Enough time had passed that people missed the Shane Black style, and that vaulted him into the MCU, where he wrote and directed Iron Man 3, wrote and directed probably his best movie, The Nice Guys, followed by his worst, The Predator. And Black says of the Last Action Hero experience, in a way it was the last of the smug big movies. Maybe Michael Bay's are still this way, but there's a smugness to Last Action Hero, a celebration of spending money in itself. As for Arnold, this failure hit him pretty hard. He was the executive producer, the star. He had creative control over almost every aspect. His face was on everything, including a rocket sent to space, so of course he was going to take that personally. John McTiernan put it bluntly. To be rejected so soundly, it sort of broke his heart. Here's how Arnold saw it. No matter what you tell yourself or what you know, at the time you're going through it, it is bad. It's embarrassing to fail at the box office. As always, I had two voices battling inside my head. The one was saying, "God damn it, oh my God, this is terrible." And the other was saying, "Now let's see what you're made of, Arnold. Let's see how ballsy you are. How strong are your nerves? How thick is your skin? Let's see if you can drive around in your convertible with the top down and smile at people knowing that they know that you just came out with the fucking stinker. With Last Action Hero, he flew too close to the sun. The movie just got too big to be a success. But when you're advertising in space, the only way to make this thing profitable is if fucking aliens fly in from all over the galaxy to buy tickets. That's it. Last Action Hero is an incredibly polarizing film. I am dying to hear your thoughts. I'm so curious how you, it's you watching this video right now, how you perceive Last Action Hero. Do you think it's as bad as everyone initially thought? Is it slightly better? Way better? Let me know. I really am curious. Now let's get to the stats. Acting chops, 7. Arnold is still in peak performance mode and he handles the comedy and action really well. Kill count, 20 for a total of 364. Catchphrase, I know they were trying to get Big Mistake over, but I prefer Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers. And here are the Every Arnold Movie Ever rankings. You've got your cameos. Oh, what the hell? I have to put Beretta's Island down there now? Ugh. Now, it's difficult to rank this movie too high because it exists on the strength of Arnold's other movies. Without those building blocks, Last Action Hero doesn't exist. So how can I possibly say it's better than Conan if Conan helped make him the star that got this movie made? This is precarious. I'm going to tread lightly. Your bottom 7 remain unchanged. Take a look there. 11, Twins. 10, Last Action Hero. 9, The Running Man. 8, Pumping Iron. 7, Kindergarten Cop. 6, Conan the Barbarian. And your top 5 is unchanged. So, how does Arnold respond to the worst critical and commercial drubbing of his career? By kind of making the same type of movie. An action comedy that plays with the stereotypes of a genre. But this time, he goes back to his most successful collaborator, James Cameron, to ensure this one, it's a success. See you next time for True Lies. Awaken certain fantasies. Awaken Harry, Carey, and Mary went on the ferry.